call ourselves a revolution in lippage control, okay? We're going to talk about, we're going to do some demonstration on Levolution, but just very quickly, what separates Levolution from other types of lippage control systems: faster to install, easier to use, and more economical than other systems. And hopefully the demonstration is going to help solidify that for you. Now, I'm just going to grab a piece of tile that we're demonstrating, 12-inch by 12-inch tiles. A good installer probably doesn't need lippage control for tiles this size, okay? Hopefully you don't. But imagine this being a 2-foot by 2-foot, a 2-foot by 4-foot, an 8-inch by 48-inch plank. Everybody is promoting larger format tiles with tiny grout joints. People want narrow grout joints, and that makes it difficult for the installer to get a flat surface. So that's the reason these lippage control systems even exist, okay? And again, as I said, Levolution is a little bit of a different animal than some of the systems that you may have seen or used currently. I'll go over the components of the system. First of all, you have an anchor stem that also functions as a spacer, okay? So you get the additional benefit of a spacer besides the lippage control. We have 3 different thicknesses of the spacer. We've got a 1/16 of an inch, which are green. We have an 1/8 of an inch, which are yellow. And we have 3/16, which are white, okay? So once you decide on how wide a grout joint you want, now you also have to consider the style of spacer, because I mentioned one aspect of the Levolution is that you're using these in the intersection, and you're using only one device in the intersection, as opposed to some of the other systems where you're using multiple pieces around an intersection, okay? And I'll describe those to you. You've got a cross spacer. Hopefully you can see that on the camera, on the slide. You can see that there's 4 corners there for a 4-corner intersection of the tile. That would go on a straight layout of your tile, like we are demonstrating today. You've got a T-spacer where you're going to have a broken joint, okay? So again, the plank floors, the offset joints, you're going to use a T-spacer in the intersection. And then you have a flat spacer. This is where you're going into the wall around the perimeter. You don't have an intersection, but you need to have a space. So on any given job, you're going to be using, depending on the layout, crosses and flats or T's and flats. You always need the flats, okay? One other thing I want to point out on the anchor stem, if you can see it, hopefully you can see, there are grooves on the stem, okay? This is the tightening cap. The tightening cap goes down on the stem, and it has teeth that grip the stem. This is like a zip tie, basically. That's how it functions, okay? Next component is your tightening gun. This is, we call it the evolver tool, but it basically, when you squeeze the trigger, it squeezes the cap down flat on the tile to push the tiles down into the mortar, okay? And last but not least, because the caps are reusable and you have to take them off, so we have a great name for the decapper tool, okay? Which comes in every bag of caps. So those are the components of the Levolution system. And they're nicely packaged in bags of 50 pieces. All the different sizes and styles that I already covered come 50 to a bag for the spacers and for the caps. And there's a decapper tool in every bag of caps, so you have one in there. Okay, let's do the demonstration. Jake's going to do that. Basically, what you're doing is you're spreading your thin set mortar. We've already installed some of the system here up front. Hopefully you can see it on the screen. But Jake is just gonna slide. We're gonna have imaginary thin set underneath the tile. Jake's gonna slide the appropriate stem into position. This is a flat over here because we're going into the wall. This is a cross over here because that's our intersection. And again, larger format tiles, you want to back butter the tile. You want to use the appropriate size notch trowel because this is not a substitute for good installation practice. You must use sufficient mortar underneath the tile to accommodate get the surface flat, okay? Pretty fast on the installation. Once you have your stems surrounded by tile, now you just put the tightening cap on by hand, and hopefully you hear some clicks. Got the clicks? Those are the grooves on the stem and the cap being pushed down on there. And again, the key to this system is it's one per intersection. 2 foot by 4 foot tiles, it's just one at each end. You don't need additional pieces along the length of the tile, so you're using far fewer pieces that you might otherwise use with other systems. Once you got the caps down by hand, now you use the evolver tool to give it a squeeze. As Jake is doing that, that cap is squeezing down on the tile corners and pushing them down flat. That's really all there is to it. It's very fast. You can check the, you got a one you can spin around the, oop, there we go. That's when customers want to slide a $50 across the floor and not see it pop up, take out the lippage. That's what Levolution's going to do, no matter how big the tiles are, okay? It's a pretty fast demo because it's a fast system, okay? Now, a couple of features that I want to mention first before we talk, because now before we grout, we got to obviously take these pieces off. But one thing that's a real advantage to this system is you see the openness of the cap. Okay, we don't do that to save plastic. We want you to see what's going on at the intersection or in the grout line. A lot of other lippage control devices cover the grout joint, and a lot of times you're gonna have thin set mortar pump up in the joint up to the top. So when you remove the lippage device the next day, guess what? You're scraping out hard thin set mortar. Okay? With this system, if you do have thin set pump up in the joint, you use the what? Anybody want to guess? The decapper tool. You get a free cap for that. Okay. Okay, you use the decapper tool. Now Jake is going to remove the cap. You'll hear a click. Maybe you want to do one over here. He's opening up the teeth on the cap with the decapper tool to release the teeth from the stem. Because remember, I said it's like a zip tie. So you got to release the tension on the teeth. Now he's going to slide the decapper down over the cap and lift it off. He can clean out the grout joint now, put the cap back on, keep going. Faster, easier, less time. Again, you don't have to really squeeze hard. You can actually adjust. There's the adjustment knob on the back of the evolver tool based on the thickness of the tile, so you can actually get it to a one squeeze operation. Consistent down pressure. No twisting of a cap, straight down, so you're pushing that down. No twisting of the tiles, which is another sometimes problem with some systems where the tiles move underneath the cap when you twist them on. These are straight down pressure. So a lot less fix up the next day with Levolution. Okay, now let's talk about removal. You have two options because again, the caps I said are reusable. You can either take them off first and then break the stem off. You can break. Jake's gonna break a stem off. Okay? When you hit the stem, it'll pop off clean. Did we pass out some stems? You see them? If you notice, the base of the stem is chamfered. So when you strike it, always on the edge of the stem, and it'll snap clean off the base. The base stays underneath, the stem goes into the recycling bin, the caps get used for the next job. Now, most installers for speed are going to kick off or break off the cap and stem together, which you can do. You want to try to strike the stem because, as I say to a lot of contractors, don't try to kick a 50-yard field goal with these things because you're not going to get multiple uses out of the cap. If you keep kicking the cap hard, it's going to break or lose its bite to the stem. So you try to strike the stem only. A rubber mallet is a very effective way, just striking the side of the stem sharply. And again, you don't have to whack it, you just have to strike it sharply and that base will fracture clean. Or the stem will fracture clean off the base. So that's really about it. It's a very fast system because, again, imagine these tiles being 1 foot by 4 foot, 2 foot by 4 foot, 4 foot by 4 foot planks. It's one in the intersection, no matter how large the tile format gets. You're using a lot less pieces than other systems, which means you're more productive. We have reports from installers telling us they're getting anywhere from 30 to 70% more tile laid with the Levolution system than with other systems that require multiple pieces around the intersection and additional pieces along the length of a large format tile. And I think you can imagine if you're using 4 to 7 times more pieces on the job, you're taking more labor, more time. So speed, ease of use, excellent results, most economical. That's Levolution. Any questions? Does everybody got a happy hour already? Come on, ask me a question.
I have a question.
Yes.
When you're using the gun and the tensioner, is there a point at which it snaps? Do you have a snapping?
Okay, good question. Is there a point which, if I squeeze too hard on the evolver tool, will it snap the base off? That can happen, okay? And again, what we try to tell is a gentle squeeze. You hear a couple of clicks. Usually when you put it on by hand first, you get it down pretty close to the tile or at the tile. You just will need a couple of clicks to really squeeze down. And once you see those legs will start to bow a little bit, that's sufficient. I have seen guys who really think they need to ram it down and the base will pop off. It is a pretty sturdy base, so it'll withstand a good squeeze, but not too much of a squeeze. Okay? And again, I think that's a matter of feel and getting adjusted to the system as an installer. Once you do it a few times, you'll get the hang of it. Any other questions? Okay, I'm going to make a comment or a question because nobody asked. What about thin tile panels? Okay, because when I've been talking about tile, I'm really talking about standard thickness porcelains. I consider the thin tile panels, the 3 to 6 millimeter panels, to be panels, not necessarily tile. There's a new standard out for installing thin tile panels. They require lippage control systems, and they require the lippage control devices to be used only along the length of the panel, not at the intersection. With Levolution, you can use the flats, okay, because they can go along the length of the panel, and there's a specified distance between the lippage control devices. I'm not going to read that off to you, or I don't remember it that well. I think it's a foot in between. But that's the requirement of the ANSI standard. But Levolution can be used on thin tile panels as long as you use the flats and not in the intersection. Okay, any other questions, comments? Okay, you can all go to happy hour now.